All right, guys, we are back in my garage for another video. And would you buy an M3 if it looked like this? I'm only asking because you might not have much longer to make that decision, since that's what the new M3 is going to look like. And it's pretty crazy because I was about to make this video about the new i3 and what that can kind of tell us about the upcoming M3. But then we saw these spy shots, and obviously that became a much more pertinent conversation. So in this video, we'll talk about the spy shots, what we know about the upcoming M3, the additional details we have, and what we can kind of gather from the i3 launch to understand better what we can expect when the M3 is officially announced later this year. So let's go ahead and talk about it, and hopefully you guys find this video useful. Now, before we jump into this, again, I gotta ask, just initial impressions. What do you think? Is this an M3 that you would buy? Is this something that you think looks good? Personally, I do think it looks better than the G80, but as always, there are some things that are left to be desired, if we want to put it politely. But definitely curious to hear your thoughts. Now let's go ahead and jump into the main conversation. So I really want to talk about this because, of course, a lot of people are asking, are these even real? And it is pretty much confirmed that yes, these are the new M3 images. That you're going to see the front end in these two images that have been shared online. It's very similar to what we saw from the G80 pictures that were leaked back in 2020. And it's kind of what we normally see with these things when the 3 Series is announced and they're kind of starting to ramp up production. You're a lot more likely to start seeing these spy shots come out because they're going to start production on those test mules as well. And if somebody is sneaky enough, they can snap a picture at the assembly line to kind of show what it looks like. So very similar to how we saw the G80 front and rear 6 years ago. Now we're getting a glimpse at the new ZA0. So that's what the M3 is going to look like. I don't think that's really a question anymore. Now it's just a matter of opinion. But if you're like me, you never really fell in love with the G80. Most of the attraction to the platform is because of the platform itself. It's extremely capable, handles well, has a lot of aftermarket support. So maybe there's a little bit of space there for the electric M3 to kind of fill in a gap that a lot of people are looking for. But of course, they're starting with the i3. So let's go ahead and start there, and then we'll jump back to the M3 convo. So yes, last week they officially launched the new i3. And I think one of the most interesting things I noticed about the presentation is they really did not highlight it as a new i3. They constantly just refer to it as the new 3 Series. And that pretty much tells us what we can expect with these upcoming platforms. I was thinking that the 4 Series was kind of going to be notched in as the EV version for the platform since we've had the i4 for a while. But then the 7 Series came out and they came out with the i7, and then the 5 Series came out and they came out with the i5. And now, of course, we've got a lot of other models on the way as well. So we can pretty much expect an i version of every model in the current lineup to come out over the next couple years. And the good news is it doesn't look like this. This is back when BMW was first jumping into the electrification, and the i3 was its own kind of standalone model. So it was paired with nothing. And then, of course, after that, they came out with the i8. But this new i3 kind of establishes a baseline where, again, everything from the 3 Series to the 7 Series is going to have an i version. So, of course, with that in mind, they are seeing this as a staple in their BMW lineup. It's really important to make sure that this car is going to be taken well. So they built this on the Neue class platform, which I just learned how to pronounce that correctly, so you're welcome. But the Neue class is going to be what they're building most of their vehicles on moving forward, especially the electric platforms. And what they did with this is they made it very polarizing. As you can tell, it's very different from everything we've seen in the past, but they thought that was important to make sure that BMW stood out. And I've mentioned in other videos, like when they kind of redefined what the halos look like, because basically everybody had aftermarket headlights with halos, and a lot of OEMs were implementing cars with some style of halo design to their headlights. And so they really wanted something that would basically be completely separate from everybody else that's copying them. And this is definitely going to do that. It still maintains some of the typical characteristics that you're looking for, like the split grille design, but they mentioned things like instead of using chrome to surround the grille, they're using lights. And they've also got a couple different ways that the lights can present themselves. So they mentioned that it goes anywhere from relaxed to balanced to excited. And each of these are going to give their own unique experience depending on the driver and your preference. Now, the interior is even more polarizing if you were to ask me. They kind of took the Tesla approach to how they set things up. There is no more cluster behind the steering wheel. So instead, you get to look at this crazy looking steering wheel. It appears that it's actually two spokes with kind of a complex geometric design to almost make it look like it's four spokes. The actual steering wheel buttons on the sides are kind of floating, so they don't really look like they're connected to the wheel itself, but it's a very complicated and unique looking piece of artwork. I'll put it that way. So everything in the interior is very different. You can see kind of the new screen that's going to be stamped onto the dashboard, but all of the information isn't going to be on that screen like a Tesla. Instead, it's using the panoramic iDrive. And what that looks like is almost like a HUD that goes all the way across the dash, except on top of that, there will also be an available HUD upgrade. So you'll be able to use their new 3D heads-up display that kind of helps put the graphics onto the road, especially for things like navigation, to give you a really immersive experience. Now, I'm not a big fan of the iDrive setup. It's probably something that you can get used to over time, but it seems like it'll be a pretty big distraction. It kind of reminds me of my friend when I used to ride with her in her Civic, and she had the dash that had kind of the two-stage cluster with all the extra information on top, and it was just something I could never get used to. But again, hopefully with something like this, it's not too distracting, not too many moving colors and numbers and stuff, and something that just kind of gives you the information you need without being overbearing. And then of course, probably the main thing you guys are interested in is the powertrain. And the first model that they're gonna be kind of rolling out is the i50 xDrive. And this car is going to have 469 horsepower and 467 foot-pounds of torque. Now the xDrive configuration is going to come with a dual motor setup. So of course you'll have one in the front and the rear to give you that all-wheel drive performance. They are also going to be using their Gen 6 EV technology. So what that means is it's going to be an 800-volt platform, and it comes with a lot of benefits, but primarily the batteries are more efficient and more compact. So they're able to put them in a smaller package that makes it lighter, and all of that comes together to create a platform that can get up to 440 miles of range. And now that I've got an EV and I'm seeing more of how EV owners share information, it's also pertinent to highlight that if you charge it up to 80%, that still gives you up to around 350 miles of range. So very significant, a nice jump compared to what a lot of other similar models are offering. It's also advertised to be able to get up to 400 kilometers of range after charging for just about 10 minutes if you use super fast charging, which is incredible, especially if you're on a road trip. You'll be able to get upwards of 200 miles of range very quickly and get you back on the road. So overall, it seems very effective for EV owners and people that want to use their EV. It kind of is the whole package, makes good power, has good range, charges quickly. What more could you ask for? Well, of course, we know. We could ask for an actual M3. And this is, again, what the M3 is going to look like. And there are some unique characteristics that I see here right off the bat. And looking at some of the conversations on the forums, people noticed a lot of things. The big one, of course, is that it's got this big kind of crossbar design, the big plus sign in the bumper with everything being painted. Stands out a lot more. Some people said it looks like, you know, a medieval helmet or something. You can kind of, you know, reference that however you wish, but it is a much different design than what we saw on the regular i3. I do think it looks a lot sportier, especially with kind of the bigger grills, but if it's electric, what are the grills for? Well, if you look on top, there is a giant hood vent. So it seems like they're going to be using the front hood space. Instead of using it for storage, they're going to be using it for airflow and creating downforce. Now, I'm assuming it's going to be functional. It very well could just be decorative. It's going to be hard to tell just from the images that we're looking at if it's actually a hole or just kind of, you know, a part of the design, but it looks like it could be functional. Now, some of the details you see on the side, it kind of has those squares. It has two stacked squares on each side. Some people think those are vents, maybe for like brake cooling or something like that. Also, it could be like DRLs or fog lights. So it's kind of interesting. I don't really see like a definitive use or something that matches other BMW models, But some people said maybe it's to do with cameras, some level of autonomous driving, or maybe some performance-oriented analysis, since again, this is going to be on the platform where they've got, the super high-speed computers that can analyze data and stuff. Maybe it's something that can help, prepare the car to go through turns quicker if it can read the road. So lots of opportunity there, but really it's all just speculation. Now on top, you can also see kind of the darker roof, and some people speculated that could be a carbon roof, but you can kind of see the exact same dark roof on the i3. The i3 is supposed to have a lightweight roof option, so I anticipate the same thing will be available for the M3, but I don't think that's a unique detail to just the M3 since both of them will have the same option. It also seems like it's missing the M mirrors. Maybe it's, again, just because this is like a test mule or a development build, so maybe it's missing some parts, but we typically see, the wing mirrors have an accentuated detail with the points, and this just looks like a regular square mirror. So a lot of people highlighted that as well as maybe making this not a real M car, but I would say either it's not going to come with it, or again, this is just something being used for testing. And then the other thing is it just doesn't seem that wide. I think we expected it to be much wider and more pronounced than the regular i3, but when you look at the images side by side, it looks like maybe the fenders are a little bit higher up and a little bit beefier, but it doesn't really seem like wider. What I would really love to see is some really sharp flares like what we've seen on the F80 and G80, but it seems like that's probably not going to be the case here. So it may be the same width, or maybe like more massaged fender flares like what we see on the F82 and G82 M4. Again, we'll just kind of have to see when it really comes out and we see some official wheel specs and things like that. Now, the good news is everything else is still the same. So this is going to be the quad motor car. It's going to have a motor on all four wheels that gives it incredible dynamic handling and should give it really good performance. It'll be able to have selectable all-wheel drive, but with each wheel having its own torque vectoring, you should be able to do some really unique things when it's actually on a track. So hopefully it uses the same kind of architecture that they're using on the i3, maybe a little lighter, maybe a little less range, but the better handling and performance that we're looking for, because not everybody needs to get 300 plus miles of range on an EV. I would expect everything in total to be in the 600 horsepower range, just like we said before. Since we're only looking at the i550 xDrive, we still have an M60 that's going to be announced. So that's probably going to be in the 500 horsepower range. And then I expect the M3 to be in the 600 horsepower range. Because remember, we still have the M5 that's in the 700 horsepower range. So the M3 is probably going to slot somewhere in the middle. And then all of this is still on track for production early next year. It should be somewhere around the March timeframe. So I would expect this to be officially released either later this summer or early in the fall. And keep in mind, BMW highlighted that they have 40 models that are going to be announced over the next, year and a half or so. By the end of 2027, they'll have 40 new models released, which I think some of that is just kind of wording, right? It's not literally going to be 40 different models. They'll have, the i350, the i3 M60, then the M3, then maybe, the 4 Series versions and all the different incremental ones with both, combustion engine versions and EV models. They even highlighted that there's going to be an i3 Touring, which should be pretty interesting, but unfortunately, as usual, that's not coming to the US. So enjoy that, everybody over in Europe. We're absolutely not going to be hating on you for the next 7 years, but seems like they're going to be very busy. So as always, I'll keep my ears out to see what else we can hear and find out about new details on these upcoming models. And I'll share with you guys any additional information I have, but let me know, did I miss anything? Have you heard anything else through the grapevine? I'm kind of making this video out of my normal schedule just to get it in front of you as quickly as possible. And so this is absolutely still a developing story, and I'm sure more information will be coming out over the next couple weeks. So stay tuned for more, but for now, I think that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.